Leaving the junction, the train travels full steam ahead for 3 miles towards the picturesque village of Castle Gregory. The station house here only has 2 buildings, and all that can be seen today is an old shed. There is a house located where the yard used to be, but there is no sign of the turntable that was built in the 1950s.
That's of course the other thing that I remember there was the beet too, like the beet growing had started like that time, and it was grown locally here for the Mulcahy beet factory. And I remember the local farmers from around the area, Mairead and around Castle and Stroud and different places, that would be bringing the beet to the station in rails, horse rails, and there was no tractors like at all when you kind there at that time. The only tractor that was in the place at all was a tractor for a threshing machine owned by Paddy Murphy, but there was no other one at all. And how the farmers used to work, like they'd have 8 tons of beet to load at a time, but they would all different farmers would join forces, and they do one man's lot one day, like, and the other man the next time. They would have to get orders for the beet, like, first, you know, and they would regulate the thing, how much they'd have to pull and how much they'd bring to the station and load it on, like, you know. There was no such thing as anything mechanical at all. It was all done by hand, and there was, of course, beet forks already, beet pikes, you know, that they'd loaded onto the wagons, and that was it.
The train is bound for the Dingle line, leaves Castle Gregory Junction, and begins its steep gradient climb to the summit of Glonagalt, the highest point on the entire line, with a gradient of 680 feet above sea level. It then rounds a curve at the head of the valley, reaching a platform at Glonagalt, one of the most lonely and bleak spots on the line. It is said that even on a fine day the valley was always quiet and eerie. The journey through Corraduff in Upper Camp is so steep and dangerous that 2 engines are needed to pull the carriages. On arrival in camp, 2 more miles of a steep climb brings the train to O'Driscoll's cottage at Skirloch. Next stop is the quiet village of Onascal, then on to Lispold, before reaching its final destination of Dingle Town.
It was only running a couple of years when it went up the bridge up in Corraduff, and I believe there was a bad driver, a new driver on it. I didn't understand about it. I suppose someone said that he kept on the brakes going around the bend, and the train jumped the rail and went up with the bridge.
The narrow 3-foot gauges along the dangerous curves and steep gradients were a recipe for disaster. As well as the unsafe inclines, the gauges were inadequate. Proper maintenance and repair were never top priorities. That was, of course, until the fatal Corraduff disaster, just 2 years after the railway opened, indicating the true danger of the line.
My father was going to school, and they were left out. And he said, I don't know if they were left out earlier or later, they'd be all killed, because it went down past Cam Cross very fast, like, and there was geese in the track, and there was feathers flying. I hear them saying, oh, they were killed by the train. Your man couldn't control it, like, you know. But they'd be all killed if they weren't on the track, like, because it was passing Cam Cross that time, just in front of the church, in front of Ashes, in front of the church. That's where it was going, over that way, like, you know.
Whit Monday, May 1893, Corraduff. It was the day of the pig fair in Dingle, and a specially commissioned train left Tralee bound westward, with 7 carriages of pigs on board. There was 1 passenger coach which carried 38 passengers. 9 others were at the guard's van, and the crew of 3 were at the engine. Alfred Redshaw, the driver, Richard Dillon, the fireman, and Barney O'Loughlin, the inspector. All 3 crewmen were killed that day. The driver lost control of the train while descending the steep gradient from Glonagalt, approaching camp. The train speeds down the hill and crashed over the Corraduff Bridge. The engine tumbles 40 feet down the slope into the Finglas River. The passenger coach hangs over the edge but somehow manages to hang on without fumbling over. Many passengers sustain minor injuries, including shock. The carcasses of pigs contained within the 7 carriages are scattered along the embankment. Of the 100 pigs on board, only 3 survive, but they were slaughtered a few days later.
There was 3 on the train. There was Redshaw, O'Loughlin and Byrne. And Redshaw was an Englishman. And he was buried in Tralee. He's buried in the graveyard in Brewery Road, across from the Greyhound track in Tralee.